NFL free agency frenzy, the Maxx Crosby trade dilemma, which teams' players won and lost, what's next in free agency, trades, and the draft. This is Kent, and this is Fanatically Speaking. Let's go. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Fanatically Speaking, the free agency recap as is. I tried to put this off as long as I could without losing steam of what's been going on in NFL free agency. I wanted to make sure everybody got signed, agreed. We got to the actual signing period. Trades were made. And believe it or not, there's still, big names out there. There's still moves that could happen. But, of course, I'm going to start off with the one deal that was made and then not made that kind of started a little bit of a domino effect within the league. Maxx Crosby trade. He was traded to the Ravens. We all know this now. And then it was nixed due to a failed physical. It was huge news. He was the big fish. The Ravens had given up 2 first-round picks. I believe it was this year and next year. So you get a player. Only so many have been traded for multiple number 1 picks in the NFL. So the trade had went down. And again, big breaking news. Ravens now have Crosby. Again, that defensive piece that was needed to help Lamar Jackson get over the hump, to add to this already talented team. Now, they got a new head coach. Harbaugh's gone. Mentor's in. But still have a very talented team on paper and should be on field. I think they had some injuries. They came back. They tried their best to get in the playoffs last year. They just couldn't, beat the Steelers. So with that being said, again, they bring in Maxx Crosby. It seems like just the biggest news ever. Of course, this is right before free agency started and before the actual new league. Anything can be official on, I think it was like Wednesday, right? So before the Wednesday date, just like any deal that is agreed upon, handshake, verbal agreements, you can opt out. We've seen players opt out of deals. We've seen teams kind of change their mind. They see something in the physical they didn't like and they rethink the money that they're going to be paying said individual or the compensation that they're giving up. Sometimes that can be renegotiated. In this case, the Ravens decided not to renegotiate. They just said, hey, we're going to nix the deal. And at that moment, everyone's like, oh my God, like what's going to happen? What are the Ravens going to do? Are they going to still try to make the deal for Crosby? What are the Raiders going to do? The Raiders had already promised all this money in free agency. So the Ravens pivoted. They pivoted and they got Trey Hendrickson, which was the big free agent fish, right? Maxx Crosby's that trade candidate fish. Trey Hendrickson was the big fish out there on defense. We know what he produces. I mean, just ridiculous double-digit sacks. He's been Cincinnati's guy. They've kind of strung him along. They've done the whole franchise tagging and will they trade him? Won't they trade him? And then they just said, we're going to let you hit free agency. The Ravens take advantage. They get a division rival player that will have motivation to compete and put up huge numbers, definitely twice a year against Cincinnati. Now, with this being said, what about the trade? Did the Ravens, the question about the trade now will, after they picked up Hendrickson, then it's like, oh, the Ravens had buyer's remorse and they decided they didn't like the physical, and they can say that without any penalty because, again, nothing's agreed upon until the new league starts and you can do an actual official trade or signing. So did they have buyer's remorse so they could keep the first-round picks? Are they scamming the league? Now, I will say that it's kind of interesting. Maxx Crosby's 3 years younger than Trey Hendrickson. So now they keep their picks, but they get a player who produces very similar to Maxx Crosby, right? Both are going to give you double digit in the teens, sack numbers each year if they're healthy. Hendrickson was kind of beat up last year, and so was Crosby at the end of the year. So now you get a player who's 3 years older. I believe they gave him a 4-year deal for $120. So Trey Hendrickson at the time, right before this signing happened, by the way, Hendrickson's market was dry. There was talk about, what does he want to get paid? Jalen Phillips got paid big time. Like he got that 4-year, he got huge, right? He's getting the 30. He got the 120 for 4 years from Carolina, guaranteed 80. So Jalen Phillips got huge money. So Trey Hendrickson was like, wait a minute. I should be getting that type of money. Look at my numbers. Look what I do. It was just not out there. I mean, teams were spending other places. There was even talk of, like, could he get a 1-year deal? Could he get a shorter deal? Less money? Like, what's the deal going to look like? And the Ravens came up and said, hey, we can give you that money. Now that this trade is nixed, all of a sudden this opened up a door for Trey Hendrickson and the Baltimore Ravens. You get the same production, again, older player, but you don't give up the first-round picks. So, again, is there anyone – are the Ravens to blame here, or is it Maxx Crosby's physical? But, again, they're saying – his doctors and everyone is saying, look, he's going to be ready. He's going to be fine. The Ravens, again, they just said, I don't like what we see. Now, again, I point out both had been hurt at the end of last year, so you're getting either way. You're getting a player who's coming off an injury. Hendrickson only had 4 sacks last year. Crosby had 10, but he did play more games than Hendrickson. I mean, it's hard for me to believe the Ravens wouldn't want the younger player that was in demand like Maxx Crosby. I mean, it's hard for me to believe that they would just say, okay, well, let's keep the picks, but we'll take the older player. No way he finishes a 4-year deal in Baltimore, by the way. That's just how the NFL is. They sign the deals, and he gets his guaranteed. He gets a good bit of that money, but I don't think there's no way he sees 4 years. But that's me. So, again, I think the Ravens would have wanted the younger guy, but we've kind of seen this before, and we don't really ever know if we can believe the Ravens. So the general manager is Eric DeCosta, and I'm going to go back for a little bit. And not because I'm an Eagles fan, but I have to bring this up. Some now believe that he had gotten one on the Eagles and Howie Roseman when he traded Jair Alexander last year at the deadline to Philly for some late round picks. I think they swapped out like a 6 and a 7, 6-7. And so Jair Alexander then just never played a game for Philly. He retired. So it was kind of like, did they know he was leaning this way or not? I mean, it's kind of a little sketchy. Now the Ravens, after this, Nick's deal about the physical, they were being questioned. Did they buyer's remorse? And then they come out and say, "Oh, well, we were wanting to pair Hendrickson and Crosby together." And as the kids say, and maybe this is kind of out now, but that's cap. I don't believe that. I don't believe that one bit. I don't think you could. I don't even know if the Ravens could have afforded that. But I don't know that any team was looking to pair Maxx Crosby and Trey Hendrickson. That would be insanity. That would be unbelievable. I don't know how they would have made that happen. But, we have to take their word. I am on board saying it was all within the framework of free agency and the rules of the league when it comes to free agency and the new league. Again, you can make these deals, you can make these signings and then back out or do whatever. A good example last year, and I'll bring his name up later, but Milton Williams backed out of a deal with the Carolina Panthers last year during free agency, and instead signing with the New England Patriots. And he got paid big money. And no one questioned that. They just said, oh, well, he had agreed to Carolina, but he had his moment to change his mind, and he did. And it worked out for him. They went to the Super Bowl. He had a really good year. So I'm not sure the backlash of the Ravens. Again, this isn't the first time this has happened. So I don't get the huge outrage about it. But again, I mean, I could see where they decided, hey, we can go get Hendrickson for the same amount of money and we can keep our first round picks. We can kind of have it all. And if that's what they decided, then that's what they decided. I don't really think there was anything in the physical that was that alarming that would have made them change their mind. Guys are, I mean, we're going to talk about some guys who got paid and they got injured, and teams are just like, hey, we'll give you everything. We don't care that you tore your Achilles or blew your ACL. We're going to still give you the big deal. Now, breaking down, I mentioned 3 names here. We talk about the Hendrickson Crosby connection to the Ravens. And then I brought up Jalen Phillips, who was traded from Miami to Philly last year during the season. And then Phillips was the huge name, young guy, a lot of upside. And Philly was hoping to keep him, but they did not. The Carolina Panthers did swoop in, and they gave him a huge payday. I wanted to compare, though, these 3 guys real quick. Because, again, we're talking about the trade compensation for Crosby. They are all 3 now, by the way, making about the same amount of money. Their contracts are very similar. They're in that $30 million a year range. I'm not getting into the guaranteed and all that. But annually, yearly, they are making very similar deals. With Hendrickson being the oldest at 31, Crosby 28, Jalen Phillips 26. Here's some stats for you, though, sack-wise. I only care about talking about the sacks for these guys, not the other numbers. There's like tackle for losses. There's all these other things and pressures. But we all know defensive rushers, they are very much graded on how many times they get to the quarterback for a sack. Trey Hendrickson, here's some numbers for you, just not every year of his career, but the most recent. 13.5, 14, 8, 17.5, 17.5, and then 4 last year on a down year where he was injured. He has 81 career sacks. Maxx Crosby, 10, 7, 8, 12.5, 14.5, 7.5, and 10. He has 69.5 career sacks. Jalen Phillips, again, less time in the league, but here's his numbers. 8.5, 7, 6.5, 1, and 5. Again, I think a few of those years injured, banged up, very young though. 28 career sacks. And again, we can talk about the Jalen Phillips after a while, but I just wanted to throw those numbers that we're really talking about the same thing, but not the same. 2 guys are veterans who put up big numbers. Another guy has upside. They're all getting paid the same. Now, on to Maxx Crosby. Moving off the Ravens, Maxx Crosby apparently is going to stay a Raider at the moment for now. There's been no reports that they're looking to still try to find a trade partner. Anything can happen in the league. But as of now, he is a Raider, which for him, he said he's a Raider. He said, I'm a Raider. And we shall see. But they have added to their team Nakobe Dean, Payet from the Colts, Quay Walker, Linderbaum to the O-line, Jalen Naylor at wide receiver. They've spent a lot of money. They spent money in the right places. They had a lot of cap space. Give them the credit. They went out and got guys, which, I mean, that's normal. That's what the Patriots did last year. When you have money, you go and spend it, but you got to spend it in the right places. They have upgraded their defense for sure. They have the first pick of the draft. It's said to be going to be Fernando Mendoza. So immediately you give him the best offensive lineman that was a free agent, the center in Linderbaum. So I like that the Raiders now, they lose out on the first round picks, but they keep Crosby along with going to have that first pick and all the money that they spent. Then if we flip to the Ravens, they, of course, nix the Crosby deal. They get Hendrickson. So you still get your guy who can put up numbers. And like I said, he's going to have a little extra motivation staying in the division. And he can definitely think, I don't know if he can thank Crosby, but maybe he can thank Crosby that the physical showed something. Maybe he can just double think the Ravens that they backed out of the deal and then opened up the market for him to get paid. But it's a win-win for both. It's a win-win for everyone involved, essentially, because now Crosby stays with the team he's been with for the moment. All we can say right now, he's a Raider. And they have upgraded everything. Now, we don't know if the head coach Kubiak's going to be. We don't know if he's going to be a good head coach. We have no idea. But we can say that they've upgraded their personnel from last season. And keeping Crosby with that is a win. The Ravens getting Hendrickson is a win. Not giving up the first round picks for the Ravens is a win. So the only loss in all this really is that the Raiders, they don't get the first round picks to continue adding cheaper options. But again, they had a lot of cap space. They did it right. We can say the Ravens are winners in this and the Ravens, but I really want to look at more of the winners in the league. We're going to go around who won in free agency. All right, so as we look at the winners, first off, in free agency, I'm going to list some names, and I'm going to kind of go through this quick. I know I'm known for really rattling off stats and talking about every team, and I just thought there were so many winners, in different ways that is going to impact this season. My list of winners, I mentioned the Raiders. They are definitely a winner for not only who they got in free agency, but then obviously with that Crosby deal, being able to keep him. The Washington Commanders, the Buffalo Bills, the New England Patriots, Chicago Bears, Carolina Panthers, those Baltimore Ravens, the 49ers, and the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm going to run down, these teams are really, really, really quick, as quick as I can during these segments, because I've got so many, I got so many thoughts, I got so many notes in all this. We mentioned those teams that won. Throw the Rams in there, going out and getting some corners too. But the teams I mentioned first, those are my big winners. There were other small winners. I think the Rams are kind of one of those small winners. You go out, you trade for Trent McDuffie, you sign Jalen Watson, and you still have everything else you have on defense and offense. So those Los Angeles Rams are just going to be right there again. Can they repeat a successful season like they had last year? And then can they get to that next level, which is the Super Bowl? Small wins are like the Cowboys, the Saints, Giants, Titans, Bengals, right? Not huge splashes, but they spent the money they had, and they filled the holes to improve. You can even add like the Ravens to that extent. I think, they weren't huge. They're small winners, right? You get Hendrickson. It's a small win. Packers, you go up, like the Green Bay Packers, you go out, you get Zaire Franklin, Javon Hargrave, Sky Moore. I feel like the Ravens are kind of like the Vikings here. They made one small move, and that small move was Ravens get Hendrickson. The Vikings' small move, and this is no shot at Kyler Murray, but they bring in Kyler Murray at quarterback. So now he is potentially the new starting QB there. He's going to have to battle J.J. McCarthy. But the Vikings, of course, they did this to themselves, but with the quarterback situation. But here they are giving a bone in the Cardinals releasing Kyler Murray. So those are the small winners. And just to go back to the Saints really, really quick, probably their biggest signing was, we thought his name was Travis Etienne, but it is A-Chain. So he corrected our pronunciation of his name. We've had it wrong since Clemson, Jacksonville, and now we know that is the proper way to say his name. The Giants, I mentioned them. They are building for Harbaugh. They are just bringing in former Ravens, like Isaiah Likely and Patrick Ricard and Ardarius Washington. Then they brought in Greg Newsome, Tremaine Edmonds, upgrades. They also brought in Calvin Austin and Darnell Mooney. So they're really adding a lot of pieces, spending the money that they have, and that's what you do. And I think the Cowboys adding to their defense. The Titans, they've got some names, Wan'Dale Robinson, but and some others. And they got their new uniforms. They got their new image. They got their new coach in Saleh. So the Titans, again, to me, small winners. Spend the money that you have. And they filled the holes to improve. All those teams fall in that category. Now, who are back to my bigger winners? I think we have to talk about the Carolina Panthers. Now, one thing I will say, they did overpay for Jalen Phillips. But he was a top free agent. He was going to get paid wherever he went. That was a given. And the Panthers just so happened to decide to be that team to give him that money. And there is a lot of upside there. He has got a motor. You add him on that line with a Derek Brown and the rest of that defense. And that's big. I mean, again, he was projected to be $92 million contract. He got 120, 80 guaranteed. So he almost got guaranteed this deal almost as much as he was projected. They also went out and got Devin Lloyd from the Jaguars. Great addition to this team. And then Kenny Pickett as a backup, solid backup. No, not going to blow you away, but you got to have a good backup QB on a rising team. They won that NFC South. Can they do even better this coming year? So they're a big winner. And then later they get Rasheed Walker from the Packers to add to that left tackle. So building the line and building that defense. And those are really, really smart moves. They also got John Mechie, but what else can they do to add to this team? We shall see. But they are definitely big winners. And as I mentioned before, earlier in this episode, last year they thought they had Milton Williams, and of course he changed his mind. And here we are now. They don't this time though. They get their guy who promised to come here in Jalen Phillips. The Bears, I said they're big winners. They're up and coming. They needed to, they lost some pieces, but then immediately replaced those pieces with other, if not better ones, right? So they bring in Kobe Bryant from Seattle, Super Bowl champion. They bring in Devin Bush. Then they lose their center before the year due to retirement. So then they go make a trade for Bradbury at center. So that helps the offense, and they fill in the spots in the defense where they lost guys, whether it be a cap casualty or just not re-signing, like Tremaine Edmonds and C.J. Garner-Johnson. Let's see who is next on my winner chicken dinner. The Patriots, they went to the Super Bowl. They came up short. Seattle dominated for pretty much. They made a surprising move early in this offseason when they released Stephon Diggs. Of course, he's got his own issues. It's more than football there. And they have been linked to A.J. Brown for as much as ESPN can talk about it. They will. Trying to get A.J. Brown to the Patriots. I think he should stay with the Eagles and hope that he does. But they were still out here spending money just like they did last year, improving an already Super Bowl caliber team. Their big one was at wide receiver. They lose Diggs. They release him, and they bring in Romeo Doubs from Green Bay and his big Funko helmet, which is that's a great pickup. He can now kind of shine on his own. He's been kind of in Green Bay with all those other weapons. He can go to New England now, be the big target for Drake May. They also help on the line with Elijah Vera Tucker. They bring in Draymond Jones, Reggie Gilliam, from the Bills, so help that running game. KJ Britt from the Dolphins, and Kevin Byard from those Bears that we'd mentioned. So adding pieces to an already, great team that just went to the Super Bowl. One of those small winners I mentioned, the Cincinnati Bengals. We always talk about their defense. Well, they went out. They got Boye Mafe, Brian Cook, and Jonathan Allen. So those are 3 good pickups for them. They lose Trey Hendrickson, but Mafe kind of takes over for that spot. You go get Brian Cook from the Chiefs, Jonathan Allen from the Vikings. Hey, any addition to the Bengals defense was going to be good. So very interesting to see how that'll work out for them if they get better or they have another lackluster season. Another winner, one of my big winners, it does pain me to say it as an Eagles fan, but the Washington Commanders, you cannot not be impressed with what they've done. They just keep going out, getting guys. They get Adafe Owe. They get Leo Chanel, Tim Settle, Kason. They get Nick Cross. Then on offense, they bring in a running back, Rashad White. I mean, they're adding pieces. Now, they're losing Bobby Wagner, but there you go. You go get Chanel. They got rid of Lattimore, but they're adding. They'll fill in those holes. But adding a huge pass rush, a veteran linebacker, another guy to the line. Again, Kason he just came from the Patriots and Super Bowl, so very good additions by the Commanders. Again, a lot of money the last few years to spend. Of course, you can do that when you have a quarterback on that rookie deal. So they're taking advantage of the opportunity that they have. The other winner is the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, we could call them they're kind of a tweener because we know the Chiefs are good, and they had the year they had. Then they lose Mahomes to injury. But they went out and got Super Bowl MVP Kenneth Walker. Now, could you see the Seahawks and they just let him test free agency? I think they knew they probably couldn't keep him. It is, when you win the Super Bowl like they did, you're going to lose guys, and they've lost a lot. And it happens because you can't pay everybody, and then everybody that's on your team is in high demand. Now, when did I know he was leaving? I knew that Kenneth Walker would probably leave when he's the Super Bowl MVP. He goes to Disneyland for the parade, and they have Sam Darnold join him in the parade so people would know who they were. It's the whole quarterback is the face of the team, blah, blah, blah. But again, he seems like a really good dude and down to earth and very quiet. So I doubt that's the case, but I thought that was pretty funny. You get the MVP and they say, well, you're the MVP, but we're going to have the quarterback join you because people's got to know the face of the team and the face of the offense there. So they bring in Darnold to join him at Disneyland. Maybe that pushed him over the edge. Maybe not. Maybe joining a Andy Reid team, a Super Bowl caliber franchise in the Chiefs, and getting paid. It always helps. They also keep Travis Kelce. They get Eric Bieniemy back as their OC. They've just traded for Justin Fields for their backup role. That's it's a solid pickup for a backup, and he may get some time because we don't know how the season's going to start with Mahomes. We don't know what he's going to be able to do. Someone's got to hold that place for him, and as of right now, it's going to be Justin Fields. But the Chiefs, decent addition, may seem small, but I like it. They also added Gilmore from the Ravens. So, again, another, you lose one guy in Cook, you bring in another. And I would imagine they continue to do this with draft and free agency. Another team that's up there like the Ravens can't get over the hump, and they are doing a lot to get over that hump. They fired their head coach. Now they have Joe Brady and the Buffalo Bills, right? They get rid of McDermott. They keep Brady on, but as the head coach, and they made a huge splash. They traded for DJ Moore. Didn't even know he was available from Chicago, but they get him. So they get Josh Allen, that number one guy. They signed Bradley Chubb, who was released by the Dolphins. They signed C.J. Gardner-Johnson, who we know is a dog. He is a ball hawk. Look what he's done for the Eagles the 2 times he's been there. Look what he did for the Bears last year. He will make that defense better and a little more tougher. They bring in D. Alford as well for that defense. And they keep Dawson Knox. That's a huge keep. So everything else they have is there. And you got to think they've improved. Just like Baltimore, just like Kansas City. They've improved. But can they get over the hump? It makes me, Ravens and Bills, again, will be a big conversation this season because you want to see, can they finally do it with Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson? Can these guys get to a Super Bowl? Just get to the Super Bowl. And then we'll talk about can they win it. But can they just get to it first? Another team that pains me to say they're winners. I look at them as a rival because in recent years, they've gone to the Super Bowl a few times. So did the Eagles. The Eagles did win the Super Bowl, by the way. The San Francisco 49ers. And they're already good. They overachieved last year. Give them all the credit. All the injuries that they had. They beat the Eagles, but that's because of, incompetent coaching and whatever else was going on with that team. With Philadelphia. But San Francisco, they did win that game in the playoffs. Good for them. And they got even better now. They went out, made the big splash, and they signed Mike Evans out of Tampa Bay. Never played with anyone else. Gives this Niner team a Hall of Fame target for Brock Purdy to add to with Pearsall and Kittle, McCaffrey. Now you have Evans on this offense. They only get better. The defense is adding guys as well. They bring back Dre Greenlaw. They add corner Nate Hobbs. They also add an Eagle who was a backup but a solid guy when he got in the game, Brett Toth, to that offensive line. That's huge. Bryce Huff retires to go start his own business. They're going to get Fred Warner back. So this Niner team will be dangerous. I talked about the Rams. The Niners will be right there. Seattle is still there. But based on free agency, man, I tell you, the Niners and Rams are just going to give Seattle a run for that division this year. And, I know Mike Evans makes the Niners a winner, but we'll talk about who he made a loser. Now let's get into the losers of free agency. Now, we hear losers and we think really bad, negative thoughts. It's not necessarily the case. I don't want to sit here and just, bash. I think there's different levels of losers in free agency and why they are losers in free agency. And I'll explain why. So my big losers are the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Indianapolis Colts, the Arizona Cardinals, the Atlanta Falcons, the Miami Dolphins, the New York Jets, the Philadelphia Eagles, and the Minnesota Vikings. Now, why are these teams mentioned as losers? Well, some of it is the nature of the business. Some of these teams, they didn't replace players they lost. And then some are mismanaging the quarterback room. Some teams, it's just tough losses. The Jacksonville Jaguars, you lose Devin Lloyd, you lose Travis A-Chain, and you just can't pay everybody. The Philadelphia Eagles, there was no way they could pay everybody. Nakobe Dean, they could not pay him. They have Jahad Campbell. Jalen Phillips, there's no way in this world they were going to pay him that type of money because, in my opinion, he is the big winner of free agency, but he did get overpaid. Reed Blankenship, I thought it was not that bad of a deal that he got in Houston, but at the same time, the Eagles are looking ahead and saying, okay, we've got, we still got to pay maybe a Nolan Smith, a Jalen Carter. We have some younger guys coming up that were, Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean. So you have to lose a good player like a Reed Blankenship so they can still have that money later and cap space to sign these other guys who they value higher. It's a part of the business. Okay. There's a few teams we talked to. I didn't mention, but there's teams that they didn't really spend money. They've kind of been keeping their own a little bit, but not really going out getting the extra, the outside free agents, and maybe they just don't have the money, right? The Jaguars would like that, and then they added Chris Rodriguez, running back. The Broncos really just kind of keeping guys, no big splashes. They cut Dre Greenlaw because for cap space. The Super Bowl champion Seahawks are keeping, they keep Shaheed, which was huge. But a lot of their guys are leaving. They just can't keep everybody. And that's also just a part of the business. And that's why they are, call them a small loser, call them a big loser, whatever you want to call them. And just, circling back to my Eagles, they are, they did keep Dallas Goedert. They did add Reek Woolen from the Seahawks. And that is a much needed spot at corner. They've added a couple other lower level name guys. We don't know what's going to happen with A.J. Brown. Good that they got Goddard. They still got, now that added a lot of cap space, and maybe they make another move now. It was also interesting to see Darius Slay, who is a free agent, and he mentioned in a video they were doing some talking and whatever they're doing, working out, and he said no team can call him but the Philadelphia Eagles. And I would say Philadelphia called Darius Slay. I mean, he's not. That wouldn't be an bad addition to just put on the team for now. He could be a backup. He could be whatever you need him to be, and I would do that if I'm Philly. But again, they were just one of those teams that had not been really adding players, and they were just kind of slow, and some of it's cap space. Now, to the teams that have me scratching my head at quarterback and can question me if you'd like, one team I would get to after a while, but the two of the teams that are similar, the Indianapolis Colts and the Atlanta Falcons. Now, the Colts kept Alec Pierce. That was huge. But then they traded Michael Pittman to the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Falcons have added Jahan Dotson and Olamide Zaccheaus. Okay. I mean, I'm just like, okay. So what did they do? Well, the Atlanta Falcons added Tua Tagovailoa, and you can say, oh, well, that's a pretty good deal, right? I guess. I mean, you have Michael Penix, so now to me they have two left-handed, underwhelming quarterbacks. Kevin Stefanski, the new head coach, which also was surprising they hired him. He's going to have to work a miracle with these two guys. They show flashes, but are they? Can they lead the Falcons in that division? We know the Bucs are good. The Panthers won it. The Saints, I think, played unbelievable last year. I thought the Falcons did too, but they really did with Kirk Cousins. So now they have Tua, new head coach, new system. I'm just not that impressed so far with what Matt Ryan's doing there in Atlanta. Maybe I'm wrong. To the Colts, Daniel Jones. Now, there were reports coming out that he had turned down a 3-year, $100 million deal, which would have been like a Sam Darnold deal, a prove-it deal, a pretty good deal for a guy like that. I'm not going to sit here and say Daniel Jones has been just amazing. He's been solid. He played much better than I thought last year, but then he fizzled and then he got hurt. Now, to me, he won with the money, but to me, he's my biggest loser as a player. One, because, that's a pretty good deal to me. Now, he ended up, they had transition tagged him, which meant other teams could offer him deals and they could match or whatever the case may be. Kind of like a restricted free agent in the NBA. I mean, the Colts did end up giving him a 2-year deal for $88 million that could be up to $100 million. $50 is guaranteed at signing of the 88. He could get up to $60 for injury. The way it breaks down is $50 million in 26, $38 in 27, with $6 million in incentives. They're hoping he can be the next Sam Darnold to overcome, getting, shopped around a few teams, not really living up to his draft status and the hype. Now, again, Daniel Jones has at least went to the playoffs. He did with New York. I don't think he's horrible. I just think that's overpaying. And I called him a loser because he turned down the $100 million 3-year deal. Now, good for his agent, but bad for the Colts. I can put them in that loser bracket because we don't know what Daniel Jones is. He going to be the same? We don't know what he's going to have. He's going to be coming off his torn Achilles, and they say he'll be ready. But we mentioned those Atlanta Falcons. They put out the big bucks for Kirk Cousins coming off the same injury. How'd that work out, Atlanta? You ended up getting your head coach fired, and now you have 2 left-handed quarterbacks. And then also, were there any other teams bidding for Daniel Jones? I know that he had the transition tag. That doesn't stop you from offering him a deal. It seems to me that the Colts were the only team trying to sign him. Why give in to his demands? Were the Vikings going to bring him back coming off injury? And why would you do that? Right? The Vikings, I will say the Vikings did the smart thing. They got Kyler Murray on the cheap because the Cardinals are paying most of that money. Just like the Falcons, I will give them a little credit. You get Tua cheap because the Dolphins are paying all that money. And the Colts, they just said, we're going to give you what you want, Daniel. You have 0 Pro Bowls, 0 25 touchdown seasons. You have 1 playoff win. You're coming off a torn Achilles. Somehow this man has $200+ million in career earnings. He is the next Kirk Cousins. Very similar. They get paid coming off injuries, and they have the greatest agents in the history of the world because they just keep getting paid for not winning and being mediocre quarterbacks. Again, I thought he should have gotten like maybe in the 30s. But again, I'm more of like, I'd give him like a Malik Willis type of deal. I give you like $25 million a year. Ain't no way I'm giving you, $50 million and that's ridiculous money for Daniel Jones. It's like right there, with the top level guys, and I just don't agree with the money. But the Colts wanted to pay it, but in my opinion, that's why they're on my loser list. Another team that's a loser, the Arizona Cardinals. Now, I did see that maybe there's a reason for this. But obviously, they get rid of Kyler Murray. They have a new head coach. They bring in some additions. Isaac Seumalo, offensive line. Tyler Algier, running back from Atlanta. Kendrick Bourne, wide receiver. Andrew Wingard. Those are good. Those are good pickups. Now, is it going to move the needle and make Arizona compete in that division? No. We know quarterback's the biggest position, and they already have Jacoby Brissett. They decided to bring in Gardner Minshew. Yeah. So, Cardinals, you are my loser because that's not going to get it done. And Josh Sweat now wants traded. So, your defensive pass rusher wants traded. You didn't really fix the quarterback position. You've improved everything but that. Now, I did see something. Maybe they're tanking for Arch Manning, and you get another Manning-Harrison connection in Arizona. And if that's what they're doing, then I can change my mind later. But as of right now, the Arizona Cardinals are losers for not really addressing the quarterback situation. They're kind of doing that tanking without tanking kind of thing. They're going to go out there and just try it with veteran quarterbacks. The next loser on my list, the Miami Dolphins, because they did not blow me away going and getting Malik Willis. I would say he did show flashes in Green Bay. He does, of course, have Hafley as the head coach. He's coming from Green Bay. They're calling him the Miami Packers. Is Willis that much better than Tua? So you're going to take on that the most dead cap hit ever. It was like $99 million because you got rid of Tua. But then you go and give Malik Willis a 3-year, $67 million deal. And then outside of that, the Miami Dolphins have done absolutely nothing to make them better than last year. It just doesn't move the needle for me. Therefore, the Dolphins are losers. The next team, this team is used to being losers. They've been losers for a long time. They made some deals, but I go back to that quarterback position. The New York Jets, they went out, they made some good deals. Demario Davis, David Anyamanyada. Animata. Yeah, I'm butchering that. That's okay. Kinsley Inagbar, Minka Fitzpatrick, and then they went and got Geno Smith. And I'm like, I know he's better than he was the last time he was a Jet, but New York Jets, Aaron Glenn, you all are not doing anything to make me think that you want to be better. Maybe you get an interception this year, but I know one damn thing's for sure is Geno Smith's going to throw interceptions, right? He led the league last year, did he not? If not, he was right up there. I don't have it in front of me. He was a turnover machine for the Raiders. He was able to, the funny meme that I saw, he left the Seahawks and they win the Super Bowl. He goes to the Raiders and they get the first pick of the draft. That's not all on Geno, but it was a train wreck in Oakland, but the Jets are a train wreck too. And Geno Smith's going to help that team? No. The Jets, they get rid of Justin Fields. They gave him 1 year. That was it. And again, there's an image of all the quarterbacks since the last time Geno Smith has been a Jet. And it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. It's like 20 to 25, 30 quarterbacks. They have just rotated guys in and in. And for some reason, they think that is the answer. That is not the answer in New York. I hate to tell them. And for that, the Jets, you continue to be losers. Now, this team was a tough one. They're kind of a tweener, but I'm talking about them in the losers bracket because they let go of their all-time receiver in Mike Evans. They decided they would let their Hall of Fame receiver go. Now, they have a lot of weapons. They went out and they filled in spots as well. They went and got Kenneth Gainwell, Anzalone from Detroit. They kept Cade Otton. They go get Al-Quadin Muhammad and Ashawn Robinson. So they definitely added pieces. But I just wanted to say that when you give away and you just let a Hall of Famer, your all-time receiver, leave in free agency, then I have to put you on the losers list. You're a tweener, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but for letting Mike Evans go and now be with the Niners, I call you a loser. A really quick loser is the Cleveland Browns, and that's because they're the Browns. Their front office, their coaching hire, they cut Njoku, they signed Quincy Williams, and their quarterback competition right now is Shedeur Sanders and Deshaun Diddy Watson. I just wanted to throw them the dog pound of bone and say they're losers because of the Browns, and that's just what they do. The Pittsburgh Steelers, really quickly, are losers just for the moment. They've made some. They're a tweener too. They go get Michael Pittman. They have Mike McCarthy now. They get Rico Dowdle, Jamel Dean, Jaquan Brisker. All good things, right? But guess what they're waiting on? They're waiting on a quarterback, and his quarterback's name is Aaron Rodgers. So they would rather wait on Aaron Rodgers than, just sign Tua for cheap, Kyler for cheap. Maybe they get Kirk Cousins. Again, he showed a little promise. Maybe that's their answer. They didn't even try for Malik Willis. They didn't try for Daniel Jones because nobody did. The Colts were the only ones. They were bidding against themselves. So for that, at the moment, Steelers, you're on my losers tweeners list because you could just address quarterback, not be held out waiting on Aaron Rodgers. He is, when you talk about following Brett Favre's footsteps, damn, this guy is doing that. And then my losers, two losers, and this has really not a whole lot to do with free agency. It's just the offseason in general. But Stephon Diggs and James Pierce Jr., you're in legal trouble, and for that you're losers because you're costing yourselves a chance to be either on teams and you're affecting your franchise for doing just dumb stuff. Like be better players. So that's that for the losers. Now, who is still available and what is next in the offseason? All right, so real quickly, I want to go through who's the best available in free agency at the time of this recording. And again, we've gone through a week of free agency now, so you can kind of tell when I'm recording. And I want to just go through the names real quick, and I'm not gonna guess on where they're gonna land. But here's the names. The best available as of right now is wide receiver Jawan Jennings, offensive tackle Taylor Decker, another wide receiver who I called a loser for his legal problems, Stephon Diggs, edge rusher Joey Bosa, Aaron Rodgers also listed as he continues to make teams wait for him to decide on his future. Kirk Cousins still available. Looked solid last year. Maybe he could be plugged in somewhere. Deebo Samuel, talented offensive weapon at receiver. Cam Robinson, tackle. And we mentioned those Browns cut David Njoku. So a very good tight end there. Other names, Cam Jordan, the veteran rusher, Hollywood Brown, Bobby Wagner, Jadeveon Clowney, Hassan Reddick. So, speaking of those Eagles earlier, there's some edge rushers right there for probably a cheaper deal that you could add. That's not even mentioning Von Miller. So we'll see if these guys land. A lot of these older guys, sometimes they wait, like an Aaron Rodgers, and they find themselves a spot, later in the off season. Sometimes, during the season where teams, they lose guys and then they can plug them in and they just stay in shape and are ready when their name and number is called. I would definitely say I could not guess right now. I mean, the Patriots are looking to trade possibly for A.J. Brown, and that's in my trade talk here. That could happen, could not happen. It may be all talk. No one really knows. I feel like the world and the media is wishing it for whatever reason. It would be a cat pit regardless on the Eagles. So I just, again, I don't like giving away players. I don't like the big cat pit. I don't think it's worth it. So maybe the Patriots pivot and just sign a Jawan Jennings. Where else could he land? Maybe a Houston. Colts, I don't know what they got left in, spending, but the Raiders definitely need all the weapons they can grab. So there's a few spots I could see Jennings, landing. Talk about Decker. I mean, these tackles, I don't really have a spot for tackles. So, wherever is a good place for these guys. Stephon Diggs, again, I think teams are going to wait and see what his legal issues, what happens there. Joey Bosa, a lot of rumors of him going back out west, maybe with his brother in San Francisco. Again, we talked about how good they've done and how well they have added to an already talented roster. Aaron Rodgers, again, waiting on him. The Vikings have Kyler Murray. I know they were mentioned before for Aaron. I still like Minnesota for Aaron Rodgers. I did, but obviously they're going to go with McCarthy and Murray. So it's really the Steelers or retirement, I think, for Aaron Rodgers. He looked really old in the playoffs, that's for sure. And, again, the next guy, Kirk Cousins, he would look the same way if he was going up that against a team like the Texans or Seattle. You better have the Dallas Cowboys Super Bowl offensive line protecting these guys. And even that line couldn't keep Troy Aikman from concussions. So, you got two guys who can't move. But I could see Cousins, getting somewhere, getting an opportunity to either, be a bridge quarterback or, may be the guy. Who knows? But you've seen, like we talked about the Cardinals, Jets adding, guys like a Geno Smith and Gardner Minshew, and you kind of scratch your head. And I think I'd take Kirk Cousins over both of those guys. So we'll see if he lands anywhere, as that veteran backup or possibly to be that bridge quarterback. Deebo Samuel, I think, still has a lot of value. He is still a weapon. I don't know if he's on the upswing, but, San Francisco thought enough to trade him to Washington. Washington, he had moments, but he wasn't a difference maker on that team. But I think you plug him in on a team, and, some teams may be needing a wide receiver. I know the Eagles need a number 3. And again, depending on A.J. Brown, they may need another 1 or a 2. So they may look at Jawan Jennings and they may look at Deebo Samuel. But yeah, very interesting to see where he may end up. Again, teams like the Texans, and they need a receiver. They need another addition to that roster to help a team get even further. We'll see. We'll see where they land. Njoku, tight end, solid player, and all the other guys I listed also. They're just plug them in anywhere. I think anybody get any of these veteran edge rushers or a Bobby Wagner, you've got a good veteran presence on your team and in your locker room, and take that every day of the week. All right, I'm going to go through the trades real quick, and then let's see. These are the trades that happened, the big trades, and we talked about most of them. Again, Crosby to the Ravens, it was, and then it wasn't. It would have been, could have been, but it wasn't. You look at the DJ Moore to the Bills. That was a huge deal. David Montgomery to the Texans. Good for the Texans and him. Maybe he can be the guy there instead of, sharing the load like he did in Detroit. But, we're in the NFL where more or less you share the load no matter what. The Cowboys, hate to say their name, they add Rashawn Gary. Good for them in the deal with Green Bay. I mentioned Trent McDuffie to the Rams, Michael Pittman to the Steelers, Zaire Franklin to the Packers. The Raiders, all their spending they did, and then they had the trade for Taron Johnson of Buffalo. So again, great addition. Chiefs and Justin Fields, that one just happened. So those are the big trades that happened. And then, you look at possible, I know A.J. Brown's getting talked about to death. And again, I hope that doesn't happen, and we shall see. Again, I went over my biggest and my best. Which deals did I just love? Which deals and signings did I hate? I talked about it earlier, but just to recap, I did have Daniel Jones as my biggest loser as a player, just because I don't know where he gets off, negotiating more money. I would have been like, tell me what you've done, And again, it's hard to argue Jalen Phillips being the big winner in free agency because, again, he got paid huge money. And again, I compared the numbers to him and Hendrickson and Crosby, and it's really not even close. But again, he is younger, and teams are, I guess, the Panthers are paying him for that breakout year that he is bound to have. But yeah, he's my big winner. Jones is my big loser. And I had a lot of teams in there. I'm not going to go through that. I do though like what the Commanders did. I really like what the Bills did. I don't like, I'm not overly excited about some of these moves with like Atlanta and Indy and the Jets. I mean, again, Cardinals, they're losers. But definitely like the Bills, like the Bills and the Commanders are my big ones. I really like what they did. Really like what the Raiders did as well. Panthers adding. And now we just have to look forward to the NFL draft. And I know I mentioned a lot of teams that are losers, but a lot of those losers and a lot of those winners as well. I mean, the Raiders are the winner, but they're going to get Mendoza. So all they did, and they get the first pick. The Jets, to me, the moves they made on defense, great. Quarterback, not so great. They're not picking a quarterback at number 2, but they will improve with that second pick. The Cardinals, again, not impressed me at quarterback, but they do have the third pick of the draft. Titans and Giants, they spent a lot of money. They're right there at 4-5. The loser Browns are at number 6, so they get to add something to this trash franchise. Washington at 7. Again, all that money they spent, all those additions they made, and then they get the 7th pick of the draft. The next ones are the Saints, the Chiefs, and the Bengals in the draft order. All, I thought, small moves that made their teams better, and they have a top 10 pick in the draft. The next team, one of my big losers, they've done nothing, the Miami Dolphins. That one pick will not change their anything about what I said about them. Next are the Cowboys, and for them, that is a really good high pick for them, and they have the 20th pick. And as I do hate the Dallas Cowboys, they made some additions to their defense, to their team that were needed, and they have 2 top 20 picks. So good for them. Rams, I mean, rich get richer sometimes. You know, they make good deals. They got the 13th pick. Again, they got their corners. Now they get the 13th pick. Ravens, Buccaneers right there at 14-15. Again, you know, additions to make their team better. Now a good spot in the draft. The Jets have another first-round pick. So, again, they got 2 first-round picks. Good for them. I don't know. Now, will they, you know, that Ty Simpson name is going to start coming up mid-first round. And the Jets could be one of those teams that say, hey, we got Geno. Let's get the future. I think this is where we start talking about Ty Simpson. I think you start talking about him with the Jets at 16. I think you start talking about him at 21 with the Steelers. Now, the Browns at 24, I don't know. But if Ty Simpson's the second best quarterback in this draft, I don't think he should get past the Jets and the Steelers. But if we learned anything from last year about teams that need quarterbacks, some will wait and not draft him at all or let him fall to a team that already drafted a quarterback and by picking him in the 5th round. I bet you they don't do Ty Simpson like they did Shedeur Sanders. Now, in the draft, like I said, they all have high picks, and another name to watch out for is that Jeremiah Love running back. And we talked about, you know, these teams going out getting running backs, the Saints, the Chiefs. So does Jeremiah Love go before that? It's possible. You know, picking a running back high, he better be that Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey type guy. So that's going to be very interesting if he gets into the top 10, or does he, you know, maybe just outside the the top 10 and fall to a team maybe, you know, like a Miami, maybe, but of course they got A-Chain, the other A-Chain. And, yeah, that'll be an interesting name to watch. Does he stay in the top 10 or fall because the Chiefs and the Saints went out in free agency and got a free agent running back? Time will tell. I believe that's all I've got. I've got so many notes. The last thing, you know, I don't even know if I'm going to mention. I talked about the overspending, the least amount of spend in free agency really quick, and it does show the Vikings in this order: Vikings, Eagles, Packers, Steelers, Lions. Different reasons for each team. The most guaranteed money promise was the Raiders, Titans, Colts, Commanders, and Panthers. Yeah, Colts can continue to be my loser. They get a wide receiver and a mediocre quarterback. I think that's all I've got. It is a long episode, but hey, the NFL free agency, I love it. It's that time of year. I like it in any sport, and it came out hot last week, and it kept on with hits coming and going, you know, every other day, these big trades and what it all means. And this just gets me excited. Like, you know, I might touch on the draft. We shall see. There's more NFL updates to come later in other episodes. We still got a while, but every time there are big news, big time stories, I'm sure I'll try to get it in on an episode. Until then, you know, it's another episode of Fanatically Speaking. You can listen to the show on all podcast outlets. It is everywhere. You can even listen on YouTube, just no video. Follow the show on social media, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, just to keep up to date with the episodes and what they are about. And really, other than that, just listen, share. That's the big ones. Listen to the show, share it with others. Just go back, check out old episodes. A lot of them still relevant. Like it on the social, and comment, download, all the fun stuff that you do. Whatever device that you do listen to it on, just remember to tap that app. And as for this episode, I am out.